wormholes, particle physics, extra dimensions. Are the wonders of so-called reality really what they appear to be? Or do we exist in an elaborate hologram? Is our universe the result of random activity or the result of intelligent design? If a creator was involved, can we discover him through our perception of divine order? This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Thinking outside of the hyperbox, welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck, and with me in studio, my lovely, beautiful, still pregnant wife. I keep saying that in every episode about you. I don't know what I'm going to say when you have the baby.
But by the time this airs, I will not be pregnant.
That's right. You won't be. Yeah, by the time this airs.
Yeah.
I think I've made myself into a liar. CHRISTINA Peck.
I will be at home with the baby.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You will be, and it's going to be a good time, and it's an exciting time.
Yes.
But yes, my beautiful wife, CHRISTINA Peck. How are you? How are you today?
I am great, husband. How are you?
Yeah, I am great, wife. Well, today we're going to be talking about angelic genetics. Believe it or not, it's a real thing. Angels seem to have some type of genetic material that they can pass down, and we learn about that in Genesis 6. But this really goes into a lot of different areas, including like shape-shifting and really why the Nephilim were as big as they were. So we're going to be getting into all that. Now, if this is your first time watching the show, there's a plethora of places online that you can check us out, and CHRISTINA knows where all those are.
YouTube.com/Into the Multiverse. It will take you to our home page channel here at Into the Multiverse, or go to the homepage of skywatchtv.com, and you can scroll down on the right hand side. You'll see a picture of us, Josh and I, and if you click on that, it will bring you right to our channel here, or check us out on Roku under the Skywatch TV channel.
Yes. Make sure to do that. Make sure to subscribe, and you'll have access to all past, present, and future episodes of Into the Multiverse. So, angelic genetics. So I think some people listening to that might think like, well, that's odd.
Yeah.
Angels, well, typically when we think of angels, we think of like ethereal or wispy things that aren't really made of anything. But actually, yeah, they're more solid and more real, more physical than we are. Yeah. Yep. Because and we've talked about this on the show before, but the term spiritual and extra dimensional are synonymous.
Yes.
They mean the same thing. So angels actually have more to them than what we might think. And because they have extra dimensions to sort of hide in, yep, that's how they can disappear and sort of look immaterial. We could look at the Flatland example. To a Flatlander, we would probably seem immaterial because we would be able to disappear out of their space whenever we wanted.
We're the wispy and ethereal ones.
Exactly. Yep. In reality, we are compared to angels.
Yep.
Now, we actually, surprisingly, I don't think that we've ever talked about the Nephilim on this show before. I think this is a first. Have we? We've never even brought it up, have we?
I don't know if we have, maybe touched on a little bit of it.
I don't think we have.
I don't know.
I don't think so, which is strange because that's kind of like the cornerstone. Like most people that are in the fringe Christian stuff, their introduction to it was Genesis 6, yeah, where it says that angels mated with humans and gave birth to giants, and in the Hebrew, that's where we get the word Nephilim. That's from that word giants. But most people who are in this thing, that was their introduction. It was mine. It was yours. Uh-huh. So it's interesting that we haven't talked about that yet, but I'm glad that we are here because this topic of angelic genetics is actually, it's pretty important, and it might be one of the only stones left unturned, in Nephilim research, because there's a lot of research done about it, a lot of excellent researchers out there, but sometimes it feels like the topic of the Nephilim is kind of convoluted, or, we basically all the information that we're going to know is already out there, Now, yeah, luckily we have good researchers out there that prove us wrong and prove that idea wrong. But there might be an extra dimensional aspect to this whole Nephilim puzzle.
Yes. We've talked about angels on the show before, and it's kind of led us to this topic here.
Well, yeah, and it really does begin with angels, because when we think about the Nephilim and where they came from, it was angelic creatures that cohabited with human women. Our culture thinks of angels as these wispy things like we talked about before, almost like ghosts that don't really have anything physical. But the Bible says different. All throughout the Bible, actually. Every time that an angel is talked about, it seems to be solid and made of something. And actually, angels, strangely enough, they don't typically appear as giants,
no.
in Scripture. So that led me to wonder, why do the offspring of angels and humans, why are they giants? Where are they getting that from? That's not in the human part of it, because humans aren't giants.
Extra dimensional aspect of it.
Yeah, it has to be something from the angel side or from the angelic genetics side. Yet, all throughout Scripture, angels are usually just normal looking like people, basically. They look like men.
Yeah.
Now, I think extra dimensions are at play here. We could actually think of the flatland example, but this time, usually we think of flatland as like a flat thing, like on a tabletop or something. For this, let's think of it as a vertical two-dimensional. So they have up, down, forward, backward, but they don't have left or right. Now, you can imagine this like in your living room or something. I could look right at flatland, and if I'm looking right at it from the side, they can't see me, because they can only see in two dimensions. They can't see out at me. But imagine if I were to step into flatland and essentially become a flatlander, if flatlanders were shaped as like silhouettes of people, I could step into flatland in the right way and I would look like a flatlander to other flatlanders. They really wouldn't have any way of knowing that I wasn't one of them.
Right.
The only difference, and this is really interesting, is that I would be a lot heavier because I'm taking gravity transcends dimensions.
Yep.
So, we could think of it this way: if a hypersphere were to breach our space, and if it was stationary, to us it would still look like a sphere because the fourth dimensional nature of it would be in another dimension that we can't see. So we would see a sphere. We could pick it up, we could toss it around, we could even put it in a container, and it would still be, the only way that we would be able to tell that there's extra dimensions is if it's heavier than it's supposed to be, if we measure the mass of it and it doesn't add up with the weight. If you put it on a scale, it would still show that it's heavier. So same thing with the flatland thing. Imagine if I step into flatland and they put me on a scale. Now a flatlander only having two dimensions is going to be really light. There's not going to be a whole lot to him. Maybe he only weighs a couple of grams or something. But he measures me and see that I'm well over 200 pounds, they might think something's up.
Yeah, that would be a little excessive compared to a couple grams, I would say.
Yeah, it would be the only way that they'd really be able to tell.
Yeah.
So I think that angels, in a sense, extra dimensional creatures, are actually heavier than we are. We know that they have extra abilities, but I think that they're actually heavier. So there's more substance to them. And, our substance is right in our genetic makeup, what we're made of. Now, I'm not saying that being three-dimensional is a genetic trait or anything. I'm not saying that at all, because that's ridiculous. But just our genetic makeup, our substance, it's encoded in us. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if you have an extra-dimensional angel. Let's say he looks like a normal person, but maybe he weighs a few thousand pounds or something. There's a lot more substance to him that's encoded in those genetics. So he mates with a human woman, and the process happens, and he gets genes from the father and from the mother. Well, all that extra substance that's encoded in the genetics has to go somewhere. Yeah. And it's essentially being squeezed into only three dimensions. Yes. I think that's why they were giants. I think that's why the offspring were so big. Yeah. I think that there was something in the genetics.
Double rows of teeth and six fingers.
There was extra stuff about them.
Extra features.
Yeah. I think that might be why. Now, this actually gets into shape-shifting, which we will talk about right after this.
The United States Congress knows of a threat to our nation that could kill 90% of us within a year, but they've done nothing to prepare. That's the basis of the new film Amerigeddon, now available on DVD. Order Amerigeddon from the Skywatch TV store and you'll get the books When Once We Were a Nation. And I predict what 12 global experts believe you will see before 2025. These books include chapters by best-selling authors Tom Horn, Joel Richardson, Carl Gallups, Mark Biltz, and others. Plus Skywatch TV personalities Josh Peck, Sharon K. Gilbert, Derek Gilbert, and more. That's a $60 value for just $19.95. Order Amerigeddon now by calling toll-free 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com.
All right, welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about Angelic Genetics, and actually, as kind of a side note, I think this might be why aliens are so interested in genetics. If we think of aliens as really just fallen angels or maybe demons inhabiting a manufactured meat suit, essentially,
right, yeah.
which might be what the Greys are. We've talked about that on the show before too. But if we think of alien, what's portrayed as aliens as really fallen angels and demons and things, well, they have a problem. Whenever they mate with a human, a giant is born. There's a genetic anomaly, a problem there. Now that might have been okay in the past because back then, how do you take over like another country or another civilization? By brute force and power.
Yes.
So the bigger, the better. It doesn't really work like that anymore.
No.
Now it's more about who's smarter.
Yep.
Who has more information, who has more intellect.
Yep.
That's how you win wars and take land and stuff like that. So if there's this whole plan in place to take over the world someday, it would make sense that these beings wouldn't want giants anymore, but maybe they want something more smarter and intellectual and to take over that way. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, going back to like the Greys and everything like that, they or aliens in general, instead of the whole impregnating process of how we're talking about back in Genesis 6, they've done like cloning or implantation, and they've kind of gotten around it somehow, and they're doing it that way. And you hear these crazy stories. I mean, and I believe it.
Me too.
When a woman says, I was pregnant, I went to my OB, I have proof of an ultrasound, there was I was carrying a child, and I wake up one day and it's just gone, and it looks like there was no indication that I have ever been pregnant. You hear about these stories, and
there's no marks or anything, and that goes back to the extra dimensional part, because if you have another dimension to utilize, you could just take the fetus out. You don't have to cut open or anything. I mean, just imagine a flatlander, being pregnant. You could just take it out. So it's just it's crazy. These entities are extremely abusive,
and it's like it's been erased. It's like if you draw a flatlander and they're pregnant, and then you're like, oh, I don't want them to be pregnant anymore. You just erase it.
Essentially. Now we mentioned how this kind of gets into shape-shifting. And this is something, and we've talked about this before, not on the show, but just at home and in private. But I've always thought, up until just recently, maybe the past year, I always thought just the idea of shape-shifting was so ridiculous. Like, how can a full-grown man who's like 200 pounds shift into a little bird and fly away? Like, where does all the extra stuff go? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense. But that was before I was considering dimensions and extra dimensions. If there's any validity to ancient, like Native American myths, such as skinwalkers, that's like
werewolves.
Yeah, werewolves, stuff like that. It might actually be with this dimensional thing. Now, there's two in folklore. There's two types of shapeshifter. There's a natural shapeshifter and a created one. So the natural one is an entity that just naturally has the ability to change shape, to shapeshift. A created one is somebody who's essentially been cursed. A normal human who's been cursed by another skinwalker or whatever you want to call them, and now they have a problem where they black out and they change. It's just the essential werewolf, thing, but it can be other animals too. There have even been stories of like were-apes and things. But they change and they don't really remember anything, and then they rampage through the town and all this stuff. I used to think that all that was just folklore and there was nothing really to it because it physically didn't make any sense to me, but thinking of it in terms of dimensions actually makes more sense now. And actually, we could think of the vertical flatland thing again. Now, if I stood in flatland, in such a way where my feet are in flatland, all parts of my body are in flatland, and flatlanders can look at me and they think that I'm a flatlander. But now imagine like if I turned 90 degrees to a flatlander. Now where I was just a normal flatlander, now I'm a hovering line, because my feet would be outside of flatland. I'm just like this weird hovering line that has changed shape. So it's starting to make more sense to me now especially in the case of a natural shapeshifter, if they have extra dimensionality to them, if there's more to their physical makeup than what we can see, all they would have to do is shift in an extra dimension a little bit to another shape. Yeah. You could think of this like a table leg, a really fancy table leg. It starts off as kind of like a block, and then there's like spheres and different shapes. Well, imagine if you took that table leg and you just put it through flatland. They would see a square turn into a circle, turn into a triangle, turn into any shape that is in that table leg. Yep. Yet it's still one table leg. Yep. Some angels might be the same way. That might be why in Ezekiel you have different animal faces. They might just be parts of their extra dimensional body. Yep. So they're shifting through dimensions. So there might be that. Now in the case of a created skinwalker, where it's a normal person to begin with, yet he's cursed. Something happens, and now he blacks out and wakes up and realizes he killed a bunch of people or something.
Classic werewolf story.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about how that might work, and at first I thought, well, maybe somehow the skinwalker, the natural skinwalker, was able to somehow give extra dimensionality to a person. But I don't really see anything that supports that. What I'm thinking now, what might be happening is other entities might be attaching to that person.
Like an oppression. Not really a full-on like possession, but an oppression.
An oppression. Yeah, and what could happen is if an entity was attached to a person somehow, and that entity was able to force him out of his dimension, yet, to somebody looking at that from the outside, it would look like he's just changing shape into a bird or, whatever. But really that animal is an extra dimensional entity. It's some type of angel or some type of, and again, it's like flatland. I could be just centimeters away, millimeters away from a flatlander, and they wouldn't know it. Now I could push the flatlander out of his two-dimensional space and have myself in there. To other flatlanders, it would just look like that flatlander has changed shape into something else. That, I think, is more biblically supported. I mean, that might even explain what demon possession is, how a demon can inhabit the body of a person.
One story that I found interesting when I was younger and I started to follow was Emily Rose.
Oh, yeah.
And you can actually go online and see actual pictures of her before she died, and her whole body was physically changing. Yeah. When she was possessed. Sad story. It's really sad. And she was very she hated the experiences that she was going through. Not everybody asks for it.
Yeah, it's like the longer the demons were in there, the more she was kind of taking on those features.
With the eyes and the teeth and everything like that, and even her voice changing, and not just when the demons were speaking. Yeah. So could be like one of those things, like inhabiting a something 4 or 5 dimensional on up, inhabiting something that's 3-dimensional, and the longer that you're in there, the more your features are going to change.
Yeah, and it might help explain too how multiple demons are able to be in one body, like Legion, or even Emily Rose, how more than one can essentially take up the same space.
Yeah.
If they have access to extra dimensions to work with, then that might be. Now, another aspect of this is the idea of extra-dimensional imposters. This idea is a little bit stranger, but imagine if me as a 3-dimensional person, entity, wanted to actually take over the life of a Flatlander or something. Now, Flatlanders, if they're generally shaped the same way that we are, I could, put myself in such a way that I could look like the Flatlander in question. I could pull him into my dimension, kill him essentially, and take his place, and everybody else would think that I'm him. Now I can start rampaging and going crazy, and So I sometimes I think that this actually happens where the created shapeshifter isn't even that person anymore. That person has been killed and the body has been disposed of somewhere, and this entity is physically taking the same shape. So that might be an aspect to it also, and that also might help explain the whole doppelganger phenomenon.
Oh yeah, yep. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and I mean, and for those who aren't familiar, what the doppelganger phenomenon is, some people have reported seeing basically exact copies of themselves. Not this isn't just people that look like them or twins or anything, but like right down to the most minute detail, clothes, everything. Sometimes even entering their house, walking around, but they always get this really bad feeling from this thing, like it's something just evil and wrong.
Yep.
And sometimes these things get violent and try to take over, and there's other stories, but maybe that has something to do with it.
That's a very, very good point.
Yeah, and I'd love to delve into this more, but we are running out of time. If you're interested in this kind of thing, you can check out my blog, joshpeckdisclosure.blogspot.com. I have an article in there called Angelic Genetics. There's actually 2 parts. One's on shapeshifting, the other one is on why the Nephilim were so big. So you can check that out. There's more information there. Also, you can check out my 2 books, Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots, which are available at skywatchtvstore.com. You can get them for $29.95, which is a $40 value. So it's a pretty good deal. Also, don't forget to check out Into the Multiverse Volume 1, Best of 2016. Now, we say Volume 1 because I think we're going to try to do a couple volumes of these a year, one around July and one around December. So this is the best of the first 20, 25 episodes or so. It's the 12 best episodes on DVD. So really exciting stuff. Make sure you check that out. You can also check out The Coming Technocalypse. It's an audio series on MP3 disc that I did with Doug and Joe Hagman of the Hagman and Hagman Report. Excellent researchers. We all got together and we put our thoughts on audio, essentially, and we talk about how emerging technologies and discoveries might play a very large role in the apocalypse. So, hence the name Technocalypse. And if this is a selling point, you get to hear Joe Hagman try to say Technocalypse a few times, which is kind of funny throughout the thing. But you can check that out too at skywatchtvstore.com. It's full of this kind of stuff, like everything that we talk about Into the Multiverse, but in greater detail because it's over 5 hours long instead of only a 30-minute program where we get limited on time and there's only so much that we can.
There is, and we want to talk about so much more. And this subject alone, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so make sure you check that out at skywatchtvstore.com. Well, we are all out of time. If people want to find us online, where can they do so?
You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Into the Multiverse. Go to skywatchtv.com, and it's our homepage. Scroll down, and on the right-hand side, you can click on the picture of Josh and I, and that will bring you right here to our YouTube. Go ahead and check us out on Roku if you have Roku. We're under the Skywatch TV channel. And also follow us on Twitter and find us on Facebook. Message us.
Yeah.
all that fun stuff.
Yeah, we're always up for hearing from our audience. We love you guys. And,
we do.
If you have any suggestions for shows or comments, questions, you can email me at jpeck@skywatchtv.com, and I'll be happy to read it and reply if I can. I do get a lot. So I do read everything, but I'm not always able to reply. So make sure you do that. And thank you again for joining us into the multiverse. Until next time, take care and God bless.
Those who control the past control the future. And no organization on earth has a tighter grip on the official history than the Roman Catholic Church. Skywatch TV is proud to offer the documentary film True Legends, The Unholy See, featuring producer Steve Quayle and host-director Timothy Alberino. Watch as they connect the dots and present evidence of a long plot to cover up the history of the pre-flood world and to prepare humanity for the arrival of our space brothers, bringing a different gospel. Order The Unholy See, and Skywatch TV will include a copy of the best-selling book Exo Vaticana, True Legends, The Unholy See, and Exo Vaticana, both for just $34.95. Order now by calling toll-free 844-750-4985 or log on to skywatchtvstore.com.